Yeah. Okay, so the title of the paper is the political dimension of problematizing ICT-related sustainability issues. I will come into the definition of that word just now. So in ICT4S research papers, there is a diversity of viewpoint over a lot of things, such as what is sustainability, what is the relationship between ICT and sustainability, how can ICT research contribute to sustainability, which scientific contribution to choose, and so on. So because there are diversity of viewpoints, there is a process of justifying research question. That's what we call here the problematization process. Let's take an example that is a paper that has been published in ICT4S a few years ago. That is about estimating the energy consumption of mobile network. I will use this paper as a common thread for the presentation as an example. So if we read the abstract and introduction of this paper, we see that they present a viewpoint over what is sustainability, because I present it as a problem of global greenhouse gas emissions. What is interesting to understand is that people could disagree on this viewpoint. For instance, some people could say that we should look at sustainability that, such as a planetary boundary problem or something like that. But even if we agree on the definition of sustainability as a greenhouse gas emission problem, then they justify that the relationship between ICT and sustainability is something about ICT representing a share of the global greenhouse gas emissions. Again, some people could have other viewpoints, like looking at it as looking at indirect effect of ICT instead of direct effect or things like that. Then they say that they want to look at mobile network because it constitutes a large share of the overall ICT sector. Again, some people could say that we should look at software development because the network infrastructure size is driven by the demand or things like that. And then they say that the scientific contribution should be in total is to be evaluated the total energy consumption of base stations. Again, there's a lot of ways to analyze or to look at this question of mobile network greenhouse gas emission. We could study end user usage, resilience, and a lot of other things. So that's not to say that the paper is wrong or I agree against. It's really about saying that there are many points in the argumentation where people could have other points of view in the problematization process. So one could disagree at various steps of this problematization process of research question in the paper. And something I want to point, like something important, is that these disagreements are not only a matter of finding a scientific consensus. It's not only about finding the right facts to have the right definition of what is sustainability, for instance. There are legitimate disagreements because it's linked also to what is important. That's why we said there is a political aspect of this diversity. And we take it here a definition of political that it is what is involved in conflict between stakeholders during a decision-making process about common life matters. This conflict comes from disagreement over value, missing knowledge, diverging interests, and so on. So there are legitimate disagreements that are not disagreement over what is true, but also what is important, what value are at stake, and so on. So this is quite expected to have this political aspect in problematizing research question in ICT4S because science and technology studies, which is a field of social science that study knowledge production and technology in society, have well documented the political aspect of this diversity of viewpoints. There is a political, in the sense that I defined, dimension in sustainability. There is a political dimension in ICT and its effect on society. There are social value in science that is well known from epistemology. As an example, if you choose one research question over another, this will have an impact on a political impact on society by itself. And there is also a documented political dimension of ICT with respect to sustainability regarding some controversy like in data center implementation or the use of ICT in agriculture and so on. So all of that is well documented. I put some sources. I will not extend here, but I expect you to trust me. And that said, what did we do in the paper? So in this paper, we focus on how divergent social value held by researchers can lead to different views on sustainability and ICT with respect to sustainability, and therefore different choices of research topic and methods. To the best of our knowledge, this question has not been studied before at this conference specifically. So in practical terms, we studied a corpus of published paper in ICT since 2020. We are reading abstract and introduction of paper, and we were analyzing what we call chain of justification. So chain of justification is a sequence of justification steps that leads from there is a sustainability issue all the way to we need to look at this research question. Like it's a chain of arguments that leads from sustainability to research questions. If I come back to the example, if I simplify the chain of justification, it looks something like that. So first, society needs to reduce global greenhouse gas emissions. Second, the ICT sector has a large share of this global greenhouse gas emissions. Third, the mobile network sector has a large share of this impact. For base station, or the large share of the environmental impact of mobile network. 5, base stations have been studied in terms of energy per transmitted bit. Therefore, we should analyze it in absolute value. So that's more or less how the paper justifies from sustainability to research question. And how I pose this is that this chain of justifications fit a common model of something we called a model of problematization that we built based on an analysis of the seminal paper of Etienne Richard of the conference from 2015. That we read and analyzed through the lens of problematization theory. That leads to something like that. So we first start with the green rectangle. So the first question is, what is sustainability for us? Then, given this view on sustainability, we ask ourselves, what is the relationship between ICT and sustainability? That's the yellow rectangle. Then, given a specific view of ICT with respect to sustainability, what is the leverage point we want to work on as ICT researchers? And then, given this leverage point, what scientific contribution do we choose? So if I take my example back, if I try to find first the green rectangle, what is sustainability? Well, it fits the first argument of the justification, the chain of justification. It's about greenhouse gas emission. Then what is the relationship between ICT and sustainability? That is that ICT hold the share of the global greenhouse gas emissions. What is the leverage point we want to work on? Base station inside the mobile network sector inside ICT. And what scientific contribution to choose is the evaluation of the absolute energy consumption of base stations. So we try to fit the problematization model with a chain of justification for each paper of the corpus. And then we wanted to analyze something more, is that to what extent the justification is explicit. So there can be disagreement over the various steps of problematization. We argue that it means that there is a need of justification. So we try to study the level of explicit justification over the 3 first steps, so green, yellow, orange. What is sustainability, the relationship between ICT and sustainability, and the leverage point. We didn't study the red one because it's about epistemology and it would need strong basis in the various epistemology, so it would be more complicated to analyze. So we didn't analyze this part. And then for each of these steps, we scored, for each of the paper and for each of these steps, we scored the level of explicitness over a scale, a 3-step scale. So low score means no justification explicitly given. A medium score would mean a justification is given. A high score means a justification is given with respect compared to other way to see the same step. So if I take back the example, so on the step view on sustainability, they didn't give any justification, they just mentioned greenhouse gas emission. So that would be a low score. On the view of the relationship between ICT and sustainability, they give a justification. ICT is a certain percent of the global greenhouse gas emissions, so this is a medium score. And for the leverage point, they give a justification of with respect to other sector of ICT. That means that they said that base stations are a large part of mobile networks, that is a large part of ICT. So that means that it's a bigger part than others. So this would be a high score. So we did that for each paper of the corpus. And here you have some conclusion about the step of view on sustainability. What is sustainability? Most of the paper have a low or medium score, but most have a low score, actually. We can imagine that it is due to the idea that sustainability is something obvious, so we will not justify what it is. For the view on the relationship between ICT and sustainability, most of the paper have a medium score. And for the leverage point too, but it's more difficult to compare because at this stage of the problematization process, we are comparing from one paper to another, things of very different nature. And I could stop there, but just a little more. It was not always, well, most of the time it was difficult to make the chain of justification of papers fit the problematization process. So we needed an intermediate concept, which are category of chain of justification. So we were grouping chain of justification in something we call argumentative schemes, which are generic way to justify research questions. With example, the argumentative schemes corresponding looks like that. First, what sustainability is and why it is important. Second, ICT in general has a negative impact with respect to sustainability. And 3, a specific sector of ICT needs attention. So this is a classic argumentative schemes for a lot of papers that do evaluation or green IT typically. And without going into the detail, we identified 4 main categories of argumentative schemes. For a total of 12 argumentative schemes. So the first type is ICT have a negative impact with respect to sustainability that we try to mitigate. Type B is a specific sector of society other than ICT has an impact with respect to sustainability, and ICT has a role to play. Type C is about transmitting knowledge and education. And type D are papers that are more at a global discussion, either a discussion about a new way to understand the relationship between ICT and sustainability, for instance, such as an acceleration of society or something like that, or new global methods like global evaluation methods or things like that. It's a specific category. So in conclusion, there are various ways to justify a research question in ICT for us, but most papers show similar structures that the argumentative scheme that I talked about. In general, justification could be more explicit, and we argue that it should. And in particular, there is a lack of justification regarding the choice of framework for sustainability in particular. And for the discussion in the paper, we argue that it might be interesting to get more familiar with science and technology studies to better understand these dynamics in problematizing research questions. It might be also interesting to have forum for discussing conflicting view. So not in order to find a consensus, but in order to understand where we disagree, at least. And in education, there are special didactics to tackle this kind of situation. So thanks you for listening. I think I should give you that. This is the instructions.
Do I press any? Oh, it's on. Okay. I'm curious about your result that you had a low score with respect to justification for sustainability for a lot of the papers. I think you said maybe a majority. I'd have to go back to the slide. But I guess instead of taking that finding on surface level, I'm just curious if you would change your so that you get different results. Like maybe, so one thing I'm curious about is like maybe the ICT for us authors are speaking to an expert audience. So they might be justifying it in terms of like a specific problem within the field as opposed to addressing sustainability writ large. So anyway, just curious about your thoughts and methods there. Okay.
Yeah, please. So what was your name?
Kristen Williams.
Fantastic, Kristen. I connect directly to that comment. I also believe there's benefits from being within the community, and that community provides you with a vocabulary, with a set of shared assumptions, and that accelerates the discourse. You don't have to go back and justify your chosen definition of sustainability every time into detail, because you can build on an assumed shares of understanding, and I can see some limitations from that. Yeah, if you this groupthink, and it would be potentially valuable to critically reflect about it. But I'd be curious then if you have insights to offer into some of the limitations. Yeah, you said you give a low score. What would be a better, more wholesome definition of sustainability that would improve that score?
Okay.
Yeah.
We don't choose to have one definition. Well, when we evaluate when we scored, we were just looking at, is it explicitly justified? We didn't evaluate, is it a good justification or a long justification? These are the quality, not the quantity of the justification. Just, is it explicitly said that for us, sustainability is about that and because of that? I'm just looking at that. And for the having common concept to understand, to go quicker, I would argue that sustainability, there is not one definition of sustainability. And in the seminal paper, Sylvia tried to propose one for the community, but actually papers published in the community are not all referring to this definition. So there are various ways to see the same thing. And I think sustainability tried to have a common definition, and they, if I understood well, kind of failed. So I think for very like highly a concept with a lot of interpretation and way to sing it, it's interesting to have it at each time a clear definition. Because even if you have a common definition, people who publish in the community would not refer to this one. So
I want to go back on this, but I want to talk about connected to this. I think it seems to be so loud. We might not have to pass close. It seems to me connected to the question of the specific contribution that a paper makes. Yeah, we can. There's a set of problems in the world that we want to solve, and there would be so many that are really, really way more important to solve than estimating the aggregate energy consumption of mobile networks. But only some of the problems we can make progress on. Now, cold fusion would be a great problem to solve, but I and many of the people here can't solve that. But there is, and that is also related to the question of what kind of evidence do we agree, do we give way to, and I think that constrains in each case that constrains the kind of contribution and what is necessary to define as sustainability. Yeah, if you're limited to modeling the energy consumption of a cellular network, you don't have to spend an enormous amount of time on justifying your chosen definition of sustainability, because what you're doing, all that you're doing is modeling the energy consumption of a cellular network, and that has got a limited importance for global sustainability in itself. And it's fine, and it's compatible with several competing definitions of sustainability. So you can spare yourself the effort of defining sustainability in all its nuances, because the contribution is very different.
Do you want to respond to that? Yeah, okay.
Well, first, I really thank you for this paper, because I really believe that I don't really agree with your view, because even if you don't write pages and pages about what is the definition of sustainability, but at some point you need to ask yourself, why are you doing that? Okay? Of course, you can answer, I'm just doing that because I want to have a paper to advance my academic career, or I'm doing that because I'm modeling energy and that's it. Okay, fine, but if you really want to have people to follow you or to do some action, I'm from a company, so I'm not in the academics. Huh? So each time I want to push people to do better software, optimize it, or we want to decrease our footprint in any case, I need to give them a sense of why we are doing that. So I need to come back to, we are doing that because we want to decrease our footprint. Why we want to decrease our footprint in terms of carbon CO2? Because it's one of the planet boundary, and generally, and we have adopted, by the way, in the strategy of the company, basically the donut model. Okay? Economics, where you have planet boundaries and the minimum thing, and which is very basic. Okay, I just give a talk and I just spend 2-3 minutes on that model, but at least the people know what is the anchor, why we are doing that, and if they want, they can read more about this donut economics model. And this is something serious. We could have chosen something different, as you mentioned, but at least we have one starting point that people cannot try to attack, because otherwise there will have people starting a public discussion and, oh, yes, but the Chinese are not doing that, we will tell we don't have computers, blah, blah, blah. Okay, we are doing that because of that, and the model is this one. If you want, you can refer to it, period, and then now we work on our engineering stuff to decrease our footprint. But I think that having the same point is very important.
Are you disagreeing with me?
No, I don't know if I disagree or not, but I really think that it's important to, when you start either to write a paper or to do something or to teach something, to at least have this justification of why you are doing.
But in the concrete example, so I came here because I'm really interested in this. I'm very curious. But the concrete example that you started with, it does provide a working definition of sustainability, even though it is maybe very superficial or very shorthand.
Actually, not really, because they don't say that we see sustainability that way. They just evoke greenhouse gas emission at some point.
Yeah.
But they never say that greenhouse gas emission is something we should look at in priority.
And that's what I mean within this community here. You don't have to unpack this. There's a shared assumption, there's sort of a common understanding that you build on. So
I
I think this is a
disagree with that.
working, this is a working, no, you think this is insufficient? Yeah, sorry.
You can.
Just because it's a couple of pieces. One is my question about methodology. And your coding scheme is clearly deductive. Is because you're going into these papers and you're going, do you justify your term in terms of sustainability? And so what you've got in mind is some definition of sustainability that you're coding those papers for. What I haven't heard is any inductive coding, which has asked what is the vocabulary that the community is using with which to discuss or characterize the common language that they're using. And I think that's really important because going to the fourth comment, actually both of these, is that sometimes that expert vocabulary allows for you to focus on a very specific problem. And if you have to go back and rework it the whole time, one of the biggest problems is you might get beyond your own expertise in a way that is unproductive. So like sustainability also has, implications for economic model, hugely important for business, but maybe not so important for my expertise as a computer scientist. And so if I want to start talking about economics models of sustainability, I would go down the hall and talk to an economist. And I won't try to reinvent that wheel in my paper. And probably am not in a position to do a good job characterizing the economics model that might be relevant.
Maybe I can start by answering about the methodology. There is a deductive and an adductive part actually. So the deductive part for the step of the problematization model, we try to make things fit this one. But the argumentative scheme are way more inductive because we identified them during the process and it came from the text directly.
But I guess that was part of my question is like, why are they scoring so low if you've got these inductive?
I'm not sure to understand the question, sorry.
So when you reported on some of your findings, you said that they scored low with respect to justification and sustainability. So the question is like,
okay, yeah. The inductive part is on the categorization in argumentative scheme. I agree that the scoring part is normative thing, like more deductive. We just look at some characteristic like do the people just say that. If I take the example I had about sustainability is about greenhouse gas emission. You could say like it's such as in the paper, just starting talking at some moment greenhouse gas emission and then energy consumption without explaining where it comes from, because you assume that people understand. You can say that greenhouse gas emission is a problem and just citing the IPCC report, and it will be a medium score, for instance. And you can say, I think we should, we want to focus on greenhouse gas emission instead of other planetary boundary because we think, I don't know, it's relevant leverage point, a more pressing thing or something like that, and this would be a high score. I don't know if I'm clear.
Then we move on to other parts of the chain of justification, because I'd be interested in other criticism that you've got on those other elements. Is there anything? Is there anything not so?
sorry,
Yeah.
it's supposed to give a talk. But I'm
What does that talk about?
It's about interacting with sensor data uncertainty and trade-offs and understanding uncertainty versus drawing accurate.
Where's that talk?
More.
Let's go.
I'm sorry, I just would love to follow up on this.
Yes.
So there is, I thought this was the last session, wasn't it?
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's a very interesting topic.
Yeah, very.
And I feel strongly, like, for instance, supervising my PhD students writing about this. I want you to stop starting